welcome to another episode of Industry Nights. We've got DJ Alpha. DJ Alpha has scaled his business pretty successfully in the London community. But I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you kind of tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do.
Gladly. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that. Born and raised in London, and I live just outside of town now with my family. And most of our business happens in and around the London area. Pre-COVID, we had scaled up to a team of about 30 or so. Over COVID, we kind of rethought a few things. And from there decided like just doing the absolute highest quantity of events that we could possibly do wasn't the goal anymore. But to say like, let's do, some higher quality events with some higher quality talent on our team, and to say like, let's not have a team of 30 that needs to be handheld. Let's have a team of maybe 14 or 15 that we can kind of really drill down, how to master this entire thing. So that hopefully the goal is that, when our team sets foot in the building, it's an instant feeling of whatever that is for other vendors that's important, whether it's, relief or joy, or, understanding like, okay, these guys and girls are in the building, they're going to take care of these problems.
What made you consider changing that strategy?
There was a couple things. I found that like a lot of times when we were just out there trying to get as many events as we possibly could, we weren't necessarily getting the highest quality events. And that's no disrespect to anybody. It was just like, for us to walk into events that were poorly organized, poorly planned, poorly promoted, it wasn't really a great look on us to be associated with that. So we said like, okay, well, why don't we find our lane in kind of higher end events? And then, you're never going to find us at some like crappy bar that gets a couple dozen people out every week. You're never going to find us doing, some sort of like hack wedding where nobody's put in the right kind of amount of preparation or work. You're only going to find us for the most part at higher end events.
So how is it?
It's weird because I want to answer some of the questions. I'm so used to
Please do. I feel like you can offer some real good perspective.
If nobody knew, I work for Dave too with DJ Alpha Productions or the Alpha DJ company. So it's funny, like some of the stuff that he's saying, like I remember when it was a huge team of 30 DJs and yeah, I guess I never thought about it in that sense. Was it like a quality over quantity type of deal? Like in having so much DJs and having to keep up with the training and all that kind of stuff? Like,
yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Well, I think it really goes to the heart of this key concept in entrepreneurship, which is claim your value, right? Yeah. So like what is the brand? You can fire clients, right? And you can pick your clients. And a lot of people don't understand that as entrepreneurs. They think you have to just take everything that's being thrown at you. But there's actually sometimes value in taking that step back and saying, okay, what is my client base? And who do I want to align myself with? But I think my follow-up question for you based on that, how do you make that determination that, yes, this is a high quality client? Did you develop like some kind of an intake process? Or is it, hey, they're willing to pay X amount, so that kind of gets them to that threshold? What's that determining factor to say, yep, you're high quality?
All of the above. The first thing that we did was to say like, okay, are there certain venues or vendors that we shouldn't necessarily be closely aligned with? And that's not to say, if a brand new wedding planner fresh out of school were to call us up and say, hey, I've got some clients that want to work with you. Well, of course, we would never deny that, right? But would we necessarily reach out to all of the graduates of the events program and say, hey, we're really keen to work with you? Not really. What we're looking for now is more established vendors, more professional vendors to say like, okay, you've proven yourselves just as we've proven ourselves. So that's kind of one of the criteria. The next one is the same for venues, to say like, if there's a party at a community center or a Legion or a banquet hall, again, we're not going to say no to it. It's just like we're not necessarily reaching out to that Legion to say, hey, can we get on your vendor list? And then lastly is definitely the pricing kind of leads into some self-selection. There's loads of great DJs in the area, and I think there's loads of great DJs who offer, the right price for the right client. For us, what we're looking for is for people to to be willing to pay a little more than the average because they're so excited to work with us, because they've heard great things or they've seen us in action. And the idea there is to say, like, these guys are worth paying a little bit extra for. And, it's not, sure, we're a line item on the bill of your event, but like, we're also hopefully one of the things you're the most excited for.
So what is Alpha Entertainment? Is that
the Alpha DJ company was the
Alpha DJ
rebrand?
company.
Yeah,
Okay.
almost 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the value proposition then? Because I mean, clearly, like you said, there's hundreds of DJs in London and surrounding area.
I think so. Like every day, hundreds more, I think. Yeah.
So there's hundreds of DJs, right? So like, how do you really differentiate yourself in that space when there's so many competitors?
Sure. I think one of the first things is to kind of put talent at the forefront, to say, this is our team, and hopefully through that branding is to say, like, you're not looking at a nightclub DJ who will do a wedding because the money's right. You're looking at a DJ who's probably already mastered the nightlife scene and has now moved into private events because, well, for a few different reasons. There's bigger challenges that exist there. I think for most DJs, they would agree there's probably more fulfillment. But yes, of course, the income that comes from that is more significant as well. But when it comes to, saying specifically, like, what's the actual difference, is that you would look at us and the work we've done, and hopefully you'd hear from others to say, like, these guys are truly evolved to the point of, our goal is always mastery, to say, like, from the second they walk in the door to the second they walk out the door is you would never second guess anything they're doing over there because they've clearly done this before. I
want to say, like, I think I remember you saying that you look for good people first and the DJing comes second.
For sure.
That's something that I feel like you can tell with our company, is just like customer service specialists.
Yep.
How do you like go about finding that in your potential like DJs looking for a job, I guess? Yeah,
it's we don't have a set formula. A lot of times if somebody reaches out to us, we're willing to sit down with them and have a conversation and say, like, what is it you're interested in? Here's what we're interested in. But we've had people, like yourself, who came to us and said, I already DJ. I don't necessarily DJ a ton of these types of events, but I'm interested. Let's talk. And, that's kind of a common place that we work from. But I've also reached out to other people that I've met. I've reached out to servers and banquet captains to say, like, hey, you clearly have a lot of confidence in this job. You have great personality. Have you ever considered this? And I'd love to say they've all worked out. They haven't. But you're absolutely right. For personality first, I can't teach you how to not be a jerk.
Yeah. So when you have fallen down and, quote unquote, made a bad hire, looking back on it, what did you miss in your formula for hiring?
Oh man, that's a very extensive list. There was a point where we were growing too quickly, and I never wanted to admit it at the time because it was always like, oh, we had 18 DJs last year, and now we have 26 DJs. Like, that's not that much growth, right? Like, that's less than 50% growth. But the truth is that, like, we didn't have the time and the resources to put into them. So none of them were unsuccessful because of themselves. They were all unsuccessful because I wasn't able to be the support that they needed. Because some of them you can send out to their first event and they just hit a home run immediately. And others is like, you better not send them out to their first event for a year because they're going to fail, right? And I wasn't able to identify that. And then other times it was just, there was personalities that didn't necessarily understand kind of the intensity of particularly a wedding.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, don't fuck it up. Yeah. My first one, I was like, don't fuck this up. But that's interesting what you're saying with the bigger group, that you didn't have time to put into like all of them. And I guess you've come a long way in how you handle like the DJs now, and just like some of the stuff that we do in order to keep DJs. So like kind of behind the scenes for you guys, like there's a lot more training now. So, and there's like responsibility amongst DJs to teach some of the newer guys. Like I teach some, we call them personal developments, just to kind of help the guys like little bit of training, I guess you'd say, right? Yeah. Like things like that, which we didn't necessarily have in the beginning. I guess we did have a few, but it was mostly you running them. And
But that was going to be my question. Did you build that model kind of thinking, hey, this is just the right path? Or did you see that done by another DJ company that scaled effectively and said, okay, we need to build a structure here where we're providing, maybe levels of experience with like coaches, right? Because when I think of a DJ, I think solo dolo, right? Like this is like, it's like a tennis player.
Yep.
Like they're on their own, and once they're at the gig, like you just got to see what they can do, right?
Yeah.
But leading up to it, it's the coaches in the background, and it's like the support team and like the fitness staff and stuff. So it seems like that's kind of the structure that you've tried to build. Was that your own brainchild, or did you like kind of grab that from being exposed to another DJ company that did that?
Yeah, definitely the latter. There's a great company out of New Jersey called Elite Entertainment, and I want to say he's maybe 15 years ahead of me. And he had actually written a book literally called How to Grow Your Multi-Op DJ Business. And I read that book, and he had everything in there. You got to do these trainings. You got to make sure you don't send the DJs out too early. And I remember reading that and then not immediately implementing it, kind of falling on our faces a little bit by letting some of these DJs fail. And then kind of going back to that and being like, all right, well, this guy, he's built a very successful business in a very competitive market. I should be doing more of this. And so much of it came down to that training aspect. Yeah, for sure.
So there was a formula that you...
I think like I would, still take that information and kind of make it our own. Not everything they did was necessarily pertinent, but yeah, definitely. I was very glad it was as close to a manual as I think you can find.
So have you ever heard of the, I think I brought this up on another podcast, but I'm going to bring it up again, the SWAN concept?
No, I've not.
So it's similar to kind of what you were talking about earlier. When you're looking for people, you kind of look to make sure they're not an asshole first, right?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the lens we put things through, is the SWAN lens. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I also can't tell you exactly where it originates. Mm-hmm. But the S stands for smart, the W stands for works hard, the A stands for ambitious, and the N stands for nice. So we're looking for SWANs, right?
Oh, interesting.
And if you have those 4 attributes, you can really throw almost anything at that person and they're going to be able to be successful, right? But generally, if they're missing even one, or you're not sure on one of them, there's a higher percentage of failure.
Yeah,
right?
interesting.
So, but you never, like, I don't start with a resume, right?
Yeah, right.
Like a resume is great, but you could have a degree in basket weaving.
Yeah.
Like great, you went to school.
It's a personality.
Yeah, you went to school,
Yeah.
but like, are you ambitious? Can I throw like 3-4 things at you and you still like not feel like you're gonna drown, right? Like those are the types of intangibles that will make or break a person, especially in like high pressure environments like DJing, right?
Mm-hmm. Like weddings in general.
Well, weddings.
Every vendor at a wedding is under high pressure.
Well, you didn't start with weddings first, right? You started in the club scene, and
absolutely,
right? Like, how did you decide to make that?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
let's start at the beginning.
Let's maybe start at like, because before the camera hit roll, or maybe the camera was rolling, we talked about you being in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And maybe talk a little bit about, because I don't know kind of your backstory.
Sure.
Talk about how you got into DJing, how you went into the corporate role, and then how you transitioned fully back into DJing.
Absolutely, yeah. I had, all the way back in high school, I had a high school co-op at a record store in London called Dr. Disc, which is long gone now. But in the basement there, that was kind of the DJ part of the building. And I went down there kind of on my second day. I accidentally wandered down there, and like just immediately, like they had the records up on the wall. This is when, DJs still had to buy vinyl, and they had the turntable set up in the corner, and just like immediately I fell in love. Like I was like, I don't belong down here, but like I'm not leaving. And I convinced the guy who worked there, one of the DJs, DJ Rez, who is an absolute OG in London. And I convinced him to say, you got at least teach me how to mix 2 records. Cause like, I'm not getting paid for this co-op, and honestly, I'm working harder than anybody here. And so he taught me how to mix 2 instrumental records. And so that's kind of the original origin of it all. So I ended up buying a bunch of records from there, or I'd work overtime for free records, to the point where I could build up a bit of a collection, buy my own gear. And then first nightclub I ever played in London was called GT's, which is now gone. But
That's like all the way down Richmond, right?
It was, yeah, Richmond, New York.
It was like, but it was like also like a open air space, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a really cool spot. Like their place out in Port Stanley, that's their sister
Oh,
company.
same
owners.
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't put that together.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, and they gave me a shot, and they probably shouldn't have because I was a hack. But this is like to give you an idea of how long ago it was. The first summer that I played there, I had got a bunch of extra records because I didn't really know what people wanted, and one of the records that I got was like a bootleg record, which like I shouldn't have had, but I just managed to scoop one copy. And the 8th song on there was a song called "Into Club" that nobody had ever heard before, and I remember putting that on, and the place just went insane. And I was like, I don't know, this is going to be a hit, I think. And like fast forward, 20 plus years, still playing that song to pretty good success, I think. So yeah, it's been a while. But fast forward, working at a nightclub for $60 a night at the time, like you only do that because you just love it, right? Like you're not paying any bills with that. And then got a job in pharmaceuticals. I did that for 8 years. And I figured when I started there, like this is what grown-ups do, right? They get real grown-up jobs. That was a good, base plus commission, pension benefits type of adult job, the kind of job that really impresses the older people. And then
did you do any post-secondary, or did you just do high school and then?
No, yeah, I did post-secondary. I did business marketing at Fanshawe, which I ended up using a lot of. And then, at some point during the pharmaceuticals, like I DJ'd the whole time. I never stopped DJing, but at some point I was just like, this pharmaceutical job is great, but it's not like I don't wake up hungry for it every day. And I had an incredible manager there who basically it was like, listen, you're in sales. If you hit your numbers, I'm going to look the other way. And so a lot of times I could hit the numbers, 2.5 or 3 weeks into the month, and then just kind of, grind out the rest of the month working on building the DJ business. And to this day, if he hadn't have given me that flexibility and that freedom, I think I'd still be there. Yeah. I also liked working there a lot. So there wasn't a lot pulling me away. It's just this like hunger to be like, can I do this? Is this a full-time job? And now that was 2016 that I left there. So it's, I'm very grateful for kind of the journey that I went on to get from there.
We've never talked about this, but talk about like the fear of making that leap. Like, what was that like? Because to go from a club guy to a wedding guy, I did it my first wedding, and I was like, fuck this. I'm never doing it again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because weddings just take a different kind of...
But you had done weddings before 2016, like before...
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, it's funny you say that because I did my first wedding all the way back in like, I want to say 05 or 06, right around there. And I hate the same thing. Yeah. I did one. Yeah. And I didn't know, like, I had like burnt a CD with like old time rock and roll on it and red wine. And I'm like, this is what the people want. And then they didn't want that. And I'm like, I know the only other thing I have is this 50 Cent record. Like, do you want this? So like, it was a brutal experience. Same thing. I'm like, I'll never do this again. I had to grow up a little bit to be like.
So what? Maybe talk through that because like for like the lay person that doesn't understand like the pressure that goes into it, is it just because you're dealing with like so much uncertainty of what the crowd is wanting? Whereas
Absolutely.
like if you're like, hey, I'm DJing, I'm gonna pull this one way back, like at DV8, which was like, what records you need to put on that night,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Whereas if you're DJing at a wedding, you don't know the demographic.
Yeah.
You maybe have talked to the bride and groom, so you know what they like.
Yeah.
But you don't know what the rest of the dance floor is gonna like, right?
Yeah.
So is that like you got to learn how to mix on the spot?
I would agree. Would you?
I think in the wedding scene, what's hot doesn't matter. Right? Versus in the club scene, like what's hot matters. So when you take that mentality into a wedding, like I'm sure red wine and in the club were blazing records, but when he played them at the wedding, it's like you don't get that reaction and it sends you into a panic, and it's like this is what normally gets me by in the club.
That's when reading the crowd becomes really
but that was going to be my and I'm going to come across as like the dummy in the room because I'm the only non-DJ. But that's, to me, as the outsider looking in, that to me is the marker of a good DJ, is that they don't leave a track on for too long. And like if a DJ leaves a track on for the entire track, I'm like,
But that's not even that. It's about understanding what the people want. And I've, like, when I first started DJing back in the day, it wasn't about, like, I would read books and watch tutorials, and they're like, you got to read the crowd. And that was such a foreign concept, which I'm sure it is to you, until you do it. And then you understand when you play certain music, you see and feel the energy completely change.
It's not a foreign concept, though. I see it all the time.
Okay, so you're more receptive than most people.
Think of it.
The minute you see people like moving away from the like dance floor, the minute you threw something on, to fucking take that bitch off and put something on.
When you simplify it like that, it sounds like that, but you're talking about people. So getting people to be on the dance floor you need to understand psychology of people. What is making them tick? There's something with all the songs that we're playing. There's something that's making them tick.
You gotta keep notes as to what's working, and keep doing more.
Even when you're thinking about the song that you're gonna play to get them back on the dance floor, you gotta know what tick they're on. And every party has a different vibration. Like, I feel like I'm talking super weird right now.
And to put that into perspective,
that's what it is.
Now you have laptops where you could like easily search. But like back in the record days, or even when you had CDs, you had to look for that shit until you could find it and plug it in. And it took so much more brain work in terms of...
Did you even have BPMs on like the Serato back then?
Man, let me tell you. So I put out, I forget when Mary J. Blige put out Family Affair, but
that was a hot track.
That was. And I remember that was 93 beats per minute. And everything in my catalog got compared against that. It's either faster than this or slower than this. And I would listen to it and I would write down what I thought the BPM would be. And then later, before even BPM count, there were BPM counters. I just didn't own one, right? Yeah. But then people would compile databases online and you could go look it up. And like a lot of the times I was close, but I was never bang on. Yeah. And so if you were to listen to some of my early mixes, you'd be like, oh yeah, he was close, but not bang on. Yeah.
And that's another thing that's overlooked. The problem with DJing is because it looks so simple when there's so much going on.
People want music.
Yeah.
When they come to you and they're like, can you play this?
Yeah.
They want it right away.
They don't want to wait 30 minutes.
The other thing that people don't know is that
like,
our brains being supercomputers, when you hear a song, so somebody's listening to, I don't care, I love it, and they're like, you know what would go great with this? Party in the USA, Miley Cyrus. But they don't know that their brain is so smart. Your brain is actually adjusting the BPM of the Miley Cyrus song and making you think that they go together with the beat, but it doesn't. Miley Cyrus is all the way at 98 BPM, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it is 98.
And then I Don't Care, I Love It is all the way up at 126. You know what I mean? So people don't take in the small little nuances or...
You got to make your way down to the next song.
One of the things that I noticed, and I'm just making reference because it's probably recency effect, but this wedding that I was at last weekend, we were working it, and I thought the DJ was really good. And it kind of went to what you said, where like he from the get-go, he knew what was keeping people on the dance floor. Yeah. And I think he tapped into the fact that they really liked that kind of like reggaeton, like Latin, like beat, almost in the background though. Yeah. So no matter what he put on, it was almost like there was one of those songs coming on next.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
Right? It was just like kind of, the crowd was constantly anticipating that like hot Latin track coming on. And then like he would play one, and then he would then go to like a traditional wedding song, but then still have that like Latino kind of fucking reggaeton beat in the background. And it just kept people kind of like wanting to like be on the dance floor. Yeah. Right? So I think that's what you were like touching on, is that like just being able to like understand what's keeping people on the dance floor and what is like like making them move away, right? And the minute he moved away from that and he went to some like fucking shitty like cha-cha-cha song or whatever, like after that song, everybody just went and sat down. Yeah. Right? Because like he lost it, right?
What was the ethnicity of the couple?
Asian and white.
Was there a good amount of Latin guests by your estimation?
Not at all.
I was going to say, because not to take anything away from that DJ, but like typically the Latin music lovers, they're pretty vocal about being Latin music lovers. So like, they might have been hounding him to be like, and like, here's 11 Latin songs. Oh, I noticed your 12 songs a rock song. Can you play more Latin? Like that's how, and I love it because I'm like, almost everyone loves to dance to Latin music way more than rock music. So like, I'm cool with it, but like, yeah, they like, you know, if you're not playing what they want, they'll come and tell you.
They'll let you know.
If you walked into that tent, you would have said, "I'm not playing reggaeton."
Interesting. Well, then kudos to whoever that. Do we know who that DJ was? Can we
He
show
was
that?
from Montreal.
Okay. Kudos to them because that's respect on that.
Yeah. So unless the bride and groom, like, so at my personally at my wedding 8 years ago, I'm not gonna name the DJ, just because there's a deliverable that he didn't meet, and I'm still upset about it.
Okay. Maybe we put him on blast. Maybe this podcast takes a whole different direction. Now it's just slinging hate now.
Yeah. So
Everyone's gonna watch this podcast to learn what they did wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna.
That'll be the final episode ever. Yeah.
I won't put him on blast, but my wife and I were very, very clear. Like, we had a really long do not playlist.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I think, like, if you look back to our wedding,
Was it really random, or was it like pretty easy to follow?
in terms of the do not
What
playlist,
not to play? Yeah.
it was all the like typical wedding songs. Like, we didn't want any of the like cha cha cha, YMCA, like all that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
so it's like you read the list and you get a pretty basic idea of what not to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we did have also a very deliberate playlist.
Okay.
Right. We said you can kind of play stuff in this kind of general area, but we're relatively young. I mean, like, how old was I when I got married? Like 25 or so. So, like, we were just coming out of the club scene. Like, we knew, like, what a good party, like, looked like.
Right, yeah.
So we're like, play this stuff. Dance floor is going to be bumping the whole night.
Yeah.
And it was. Like, it was great. And then the funny thing is you flash forward now 8 years, I own my bar business.
Yeah.
And I run into this fucking guy. DJing at a wedding. I don't think he recognized me.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put him on blast for what he didn't do. So he was supposed to record our wedding speeches.
Oh.
And he must have had a technical failure or something, but then he just totally ghosted me. Like, when I like tried to ask him about it, like, hey, where are the speeches? Ghosts me. And then he shows up at this wedding like 8 years later that we're working. It took me everything in my being not to go up to him and just be like, you're a piece of shit for like just ghosting me.
Yeah.
So
Did
I
you bring
didn't.
those recordings today?
It would have been so much easier to just be upfront about it. Hey, I didn't push record. I forgot whatever. I apologize.
Yeah.
But ghosting is like, I think, the worst thing you could do.
But I didn't say anything because, like, now I'm in the industry and I'm like, do I really want to do that? I'm like, it's so long ago, whatever, who cares? But I took a little bit of satisfaction in knowing that he was a shit DJ. Like, he like, the dance floor was not moving all night. Like, it moved like once or twice when he played like some really like key hits. But other than that, like, transitions were shit. He had like a helper and like, I don't know why, but like, it didn't like really help anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, for me, I was like, thank God I had that play and do not playlist, or my wedding would have been like this. And not to say that the wedding was bad. I don't want to say that the wedding was bad or like the dance floor was bad. It was okay, but it could have been better. Like, I've seen better kind of like DJ work.
Yeah.
So what's your approach to teaching? What do you teach them first? Song selection, how to play music, or the technical transition part?
No, definitely. In fact, I don't even teach the technical transitions anymore. It's like it's guys on our team doing that because they've put so much work into that that like it's truly a strength of theirs. But yeah, I definitely talk more on the programming side of things to be like, listen, here's how you handle it if somebody asks for a rock request, right? Here's 5 like classic rock, whatever, just name the genre. Like, here's it, like, because the problem is you go online, and if you go online and you look up like, you know, top 5 hip hop songs, it's like they'll tell you the top 5 of all time, or maybe even the top 5 most streamed, but they won't tell you the top 5 to get people on the dance floor, right? And so that's what I'll be like, here, make a crate with these 5 in it, because these are the ones that won't fail you. So I'm definitely more on the programming side for the new guys. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask all three of you the same question. What is the number one song in your experience to get people on the dance floor?
You can't. There's.
Hold on. Hold on.
Depends on a million different.
So many variables, but I like the question.
No, because you guys are gonna, all three of you have like very unique experience, and all three of you are probably law of averages gonna have like 1 or 2 that you're like, this is my go-to, and that's what I want to hear. So like, what is one of your go-tos?
I mean, if I know nothing,
Please
if
don't
I'm
say
walking
fucking
in,
living on a prayer.
Oh no. But like, if I'm walking in with no information and you just said, listen, here's 300 people, hit them with one song and see what you can do, I would put my money on probably Danza Kuduro. That's probably where I would go.
The Spanish vibe.
Yeah,
Just
like
it
because
hits
it's got
all
it
types
does.
of
And what I found is that like
cultures
you don't know the song, but you can somehow still sing along to it. And and there's nobody who thinks that's a corny song. It's just like that's not. But it also kind of elevates other people who are like, even if they're not that cool, they'll be like, "This is a cool song," and they'll get into it. So for me, I'm like, this one hits a lot of check marks. So that's. It's
great.
That's a really great answer. It's almost like you two spoke before the pod or
No, we
something.
didn't. That's a great answer. All right. Paul, you were a DJ for a long time. Do you have one, or even today, that you feel like you would go to?
I do a lot of house music.
So like
Well,
Avicii
that's like
levels
my
or something? No, but I feel like that one would get people.
I mean, it
What
does.
was it?
Levels by Avicii.
Yeah, I mean,
Surprisingly, it does.
I think it's got like a wide acceptance on it. Yeah.
Except for like the heavy house lovers. They're like, what are you playing?
Yeah,
they would hate on it.
You're a
But I
sellout
mean,
if you go that far,
Yeah.
right?
Really?
Yeah.
For real? I did not know that. So the heavy house lovers don't like Avicii?
I mean, if you play it now, it would be frowned upon. That's for sure.
But there was a time. There was a time.
Oh, man.
yeah.
Back in the day at Frog, you play that shit and it would go hard.
Levels in reverse. Yeah. Oh man.
But
You didn't give an answer yet.
like, if I'm playing, honestly, for myself, I love playing music I've never heard before.
Okay.
So like, I always find music that my friends haven't heard before.
Yeah.
And I'll find a new banger and I have them over at my house. I'm like, you gotta listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's something different that they haven't heard, they actually appreciate it. Whereas like a lot of club stuff and weddings, you have to play music people know.
Yeah.
As soon as you play something they don't know, that's what turns them off.
Well, we did that tonight. We made him listen to "I Just Had Sex" by a Lonely Island.
And I was like, I've
Wait, you never heard that
this.
song?
He never
No.
heard the
Get
song.
out. Oh
No.
man, that's a.
And he
great
never
song.
heard I'm on a boat.
What?
Yeah, I've never heard that.
This has never come up in your DJ life at all.
Never, no.
Really?
Yo, we were showing them stuff and we were like fucking laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
So my answer is gonna be quite the opposite. It's gonna be something no one's ever heard.
Yeah.
And something that's different.
Yeah. So if you want to get the crowd hype, like next DJ gig, just throw on "I Just Had Sex."
See how that goes.
I feel like it would hit. I've only played it a handful of times ever. But.
Dave's gonna fire.
Yeah.
Directly after
Listen, man, I looked at the
Me
playlist.
personally, to answer your question, I look at it like certain artists have a higher hit rate. So if this was, for example, Call of Duty, someone like Shania Twain is up in like the 70s. Or like someone
What do you mean
like
Call of Duty?
Like, so accuracy, like when you play this person, there's a 70% chance of it hitting.
Oh, okay.
Taylor Swift is
Like
in that.
"Man, I Feel Like a Woman" or something.
Yeah,
like that? Okay,
yes.
okay.
I'm starting to think Nicki Minaj is in there with the Barbs because I notice a lot of girls love Nicki. There's the Drake stands, but I think I put Drake maybe a little bit lower. I think he really kills the clubs. I don't think he does quite as well in the weddings. But yeah, to play one song that I think would work for everybody is interesting because like you've done Rock the Park.
Yeah.
It looks like it is a great gig, but it's also probably a pretty fucking hard gig, right?
pretty terrifying.
You fucking look out
Do
there
you
and
play
there's like
every day at Rock the Park? Because it's 5 days long, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to play something different.
And like
every
and like
single day.
opening for Billy Talon or Five Finger Death Punch, like that is not like I had to do my homework on those nights, right? Like I didn't just open up the crate that I have for those nights. Like I didn't have any.
Which is what kind of makes you stand out, though, is like you don't go in blind. You do the research and you figure out
to
what's
do the
going to
homework.
work.
Yeah, but it's funny because like I consider myself such a professional to be like, my job, I must impress everyone, but like I'll message some guy I went to college with to be like, hey, you used to listen to Rage Against the Machine, right? Can you help me out with this? Like, and he'd be like, sorry, who's this? Like, but it's like you gotta put the work in for that, right? Yeah.
How long have you been playing at Rock the Park?
I started in 2016.
Okay.
really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Is that what made you also leave your job? Did we talk
That
about
was
that?
that was the
Never-
same. Yeah, it's months apart. Yeah.
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 So what made you switch gears and say,
That's where I thought you were
I'm
going
gonna
with your
dive
question.
in.
Like that is a pivotal point in a lot of entrepreneurs' journey,
Yep.
right? Like I haven't made the jump yet.
Yeah.
Or I just hit the mic, so you might need to edit that out.
Yeah, that's exactly
You
what
haven't made technically any kind of jump yet there. I know you have, and you have, and we've talked about your journey. You're kind of forced to make the jump. But what made you make the jump, and what was the scariest part about making that jump?
Oh man, there was a lot that went into that. I had it like in retrospect, I could have and probably should have done it so much earlier. But because I had it so good at that job, it was like there wasn't a ton of pressure. It wasn't like I was working some factory job that I hated every day. Like, I can't wait to get the hell out of this place. Like, I liked that job, right? So I should have jumped earlier, but I didn't. And part of it was that like the societal pressure to be a grown up, right? To be like, well, you don't leave your pension and your benefits and your commission salary to go be a DJ. Like, you don't do that, right? Like, you're going to find very few people in the world who will give you that advice, except for people who have done that, entrepreneurs, creatives who have done that successfully. And ultimately, it was like, I sat down and I'm like, all right, well, I'm making almost triple DJing what I'm making at this job. And my wife, she was the final kind of turning point to be like, made me realize, like, hey, this job is a safety net. So you're never going to be able to fully explore working for yourself as long as you have this safety net. But the really big thing that she said to me is, she's like, if this whole thing crashes and burns, you're in the wedding world, so you're going to get 12 months notice on anything, because you at any given time, you have 12 to 16 months what am I trying to say here? Like
easy projections.
Preview.
You know
Absolutely,
what's coming up.
to be able to project kind of what your revenue looks like. So you could say, like, listen, I don't have anything after 8 months. That means I have 8 months to go find a job. But further to that is, she's like, if this whole thing just falls apart, you can just go get another job. And that to me was like, I hadn't thought about that, right? Because like, it just like.
Did you have any kids yet?
I had, at that time, I would have had a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
So that's still a lot of pressure.
Yeah. It was a lot of pressure. Yeah. And now, thankfully, she has a good job, especially thankfully during the COVID era. But, it was like, if I totally crashed and burned, she would be able to support our family until I was able to figure it out. Right.
So I actually ran into a quote today that I fucking got up immediately and wrote it on my chalkboard because I thought it was such a great quote, and how timely that we're having a podcast now, because I'm going to relay it to the world. All 14 of our followers.
From now.
Yeah. So the quote was, if you don't take risks, you'll spend the rest of your life working for someone who did.
I like it.
That also reminds me of the quote where, it's not a quote, but the number one regret of people is the fact that they didn't try something.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like, regret eats people to death.
Yeah. Like,
which is kind of on the same line.
My wife and I had a lot of healthy and unhealthy debates about kind of the leap into entrepreneurship, because, as you know, like, new fatherhood and, working full time and everything, there's so many commitments there, right? So, and like, my wife knows that I'm the type of person that if I decide I'm going to do something, I don't just kind of like half do it.
Right.
I do it, right? Like, I'm committed to getting this done and being successful. So she knew that when I was like thinking about this, that, okay, there's just another strain on your time, right? So we had a lot of kind of back and forth discussions as a family, as like, is this the right thing to do, right? And I think, your story is so fantastic because it's almost storybook, where your wife was like, said exactly what you wanted her to say. Yeah. And what I want to share is that my wife said the actual opposite. And I think that's also the truth for a lot of entrepreneurs too, is that like, you're not always going to get the storybook where, your wife's going to walk in one day and say, honey, you need to just do this. Yeah, I believe in you. And it's like, no, it doesn't always fucking work that way. Yeah. Like, my wife was like, no, you got a fucking good job. Like, things are okay.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
what you need to do is pay this mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why are you doing this? Right.
Yeah.
And I just have like a vision. Right. And now I'm glad I did that, because now finally, Katrina has turned a little bit of a corner, and she's like, I see the vision.
Yeah.
Right. A little bit of a fault on me, because like, for me as an entrepreneur and as a business person, you should be able to relay your vision early on, rather than have someone just kind of like, be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going somewhere. Yeah. So that's maybe like, looking back, I could have been more effective there. But it doesn't always go kind of the way you hope it's going to go when you move into those like really challenging conversations. And I guess the spirit of it is if you're really passionate about something and you believe in your gut that it's the way to go, 9 times out of 10 it probably is.
You gotta listen to your gut.
You gotta listen to your gut, right? Like, my gut has failed me very few times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you left your job, what were some of the like how many bookings did you have? What
That's a
made
great question.
you know, like really?
What was the pipeline basically?
Yeah. Like what was your process after you left?
Numbers wise, I can't say that I remember specifically where we were at with bookings. What I can say is that I had figured out that we were booking about 75 to 80% of inquiries. And so I knew that like whatever I did, I can't play with that number too much, because if that number drops too much, that's the rest of the business, right? So I knew that no matter what I did, I had to keep it around there. So if I was going to put the price up, I better do something to compensate for that, whether it was more marketing or more networking or better branding, whatever that was. But yeah, that to me was the major metric, to be like, if you're not around the 75 to 80%, like you can expect that the rest of the business will follow suit, right?
So you made a comment a while ago saying, hey, I probably could have and should have made the jump earlier. Looking back, how would that have benefited your business from a scalability perspective?
I would like to think that, like, you know, if I had made the jump 3 years earlier, which maybe was realistic, 2 years, 3 years earlier, that like everything would have just been fast forwarded by 2 or 3 years. But like, who knows, right? Who knows what would have happened in that
Everything
time?
happens for a reason.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. I do have to trust the process, because I feel like my journey has just like, it's taken so long, right? Like everything I wanted seems like it took way longer than it has for anybody else. Like now I see DJs that started in 2017, 2018 doing huge clubs and festivals or going on tours. And I'm like, how? I can't do that. I couldn't do that. It took me way too long to do all these things, right? So I think that's probably I don't actually know what would have been different, but I do trust that this was the right thing. And
do you think that's a social media effect of the DJs that like have blown up quicker now? Or like, why do you think there's that effect that's happening in the industry where you can get bigger quicker?
man, you know what? That's a really good question. I'm sure social media has a lot to do with it, but like, I'll straight up humbly say that they might just be better at this, right? Like maybe just like me getting to where I'm, you know, super happy. It took 15 years, right? Whereas for them, you know, they fast tracked everything, or they figured out to say like, hey, you know, if I look at DJ Alpha's career, like, you know, he only ever DJ'd. What if I produce, right? And that's something that definitely can fast track this whole process. You can go from literally, you know, bedroom DJ 6 months later to playing major festival stages, right?
It's a whole other ball game.
It really is, yeah. So it's like, it's something, you know, that I've never dabbled in. I just have no interest in it, but like I respect the power of it.
So can I ask again, maybe a dumb question? And my understanding of the difference between DJing and producing is when you're DJing, you're basically mixing the tracks. When you're producing, you're actually creating the beats.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very confusing because people refer to DJs like world famous
Like DJ Khaled.
Yeah.
world
Who's a
famous
producer?
producers as DJs, but really they're producers, and the way they perform their music is by DJ.
Absolutely. David Guetta, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Like,
by default, they're music producers.
Yeah.
They're just DJing as performances.
Yeah.
What I want to say to your point, too, that was a great question, by the way. I think, too, with DJing, because it just started booming lately within the last maybe, 10 years. Like when Dave started, what was keeping kind of
There's a very hard entry point.
Exactly.
To start
because it was so expensive.
You had to
really had to invest.
save records.
$12 a song.
Yeah. And
it's
that kept
pretty hard to commit.
a lot of like the people that weren't super dedicated to it, like away from it. But now
There's a lower barrier to entry.
yeah, you
Way
know,
lower.
and then some of these kids, you know, like you're saying, like kudos to them for making the right choices. But like for me, when I look at my career, like I went through a point where like I was a cocky ass fucking kid who did not know anything about business. I was just there to have a good time, have some drinks, and I was content. You know what I mean?
But what's changed?
You know, and then you get older and you're like, oh, okay, so if I take this serious, then I could turn this into a business. Like I remember when I like hit up Dave at first, I was actually, for me, I went through like some tough times because I was such a cocky ass fucking kid. My phone stopped ringing. So word had gotten around that this guy is kind of a bit too much. So when you book him, he does come with like some extra, like, you know what I mean? Just bullshit, basically. I had baggage. So when my phone stopped ringing, it was eye-opening for me because I'm like, holy shit, I never knew, right? So I went through this, maybe I'd call it like a year or two where nothing was going for me. And I decided, I'm like, okay, let me go online and like, let me look. Is there DJ companies? And 2 companies came up. It was Music Central and DJ Alpha. And I'm like, okay, well, shit. I'm just gonna shoot my shot and try it. You know, I don't know if I'm for them or whatever. And I shot my shot and it ended up working out for me. But that's how I kind of got my second chance, which not a lot of people get. You know what I mean? And when you get a second chance, you cherish it a lot better. You take care of it, and then you realize, because there's some people that'll see me, they're like, oh, like, for example, he knows me as Matt. People that know me as Matt know me for a really long time.
Okay, yeah.
But like someone
It's
will
also
come up
because I can't. It's so difficult pronouncing your name. I'm like, all right, you're Matt.
So there's some people in the DJ world that know me as Matt, and every time I hear that, I'm like, oh shit, what'd I do, man? I'm just gonna say sorry in advance. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was just a learning curve for me. Like
I feel like especially in London too, though, because it's like in Toronto you could probably get away with that forever. But yeah, in London it's like it doesn't take long for the work.
It's a small community.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I asked. We had a bartender that came on the app. I asked him what his relationship with alcohol was.
Yeah.
Because for me, very young into DJing, alcohol came like this because the mic.
I think for most people too. Yeah. Like it's and it comes like free and easy in this world, right? Like and it's like you don't even go to the bar; they bring it to you, right? Like that can be a very.
And then you imagine what celebrities go through, and you look at their addictions and problems. And you're like, it's easy for us,
right? Yeah,
it's so easily accessible to us. Let alone if you're like on top of the world.
So is that something that was also a struggle in the earlier years, like just being able to navigate, hey, I've got a job to do, I've got to execute, but I'm also in this environment where people are like bringing me drinks, and like when you're a younger person, it's like hard to say no to that. Yeah. Like how did you navigate that?
I think it probably would be. Not for me. I've never had a drink in my life.
It's never.
No,
I've never had.
So for me, it was an easy decision, and most people are pretty cool when you're just like, oh no, I don't drink. They're like, oh no worries. Now the interesting thing about that is that I do think that's probably that has an impact on your networking and your social side of things, right? Because people want you to be comfortable and have a beer or a drink or whatever, especially in the bar world, right? But it's interesting. I remember I was DJing at this one bar, and they kept inviting me to their after party, and I'm like, it's not really my scene, right? So I wouldn't go. And then another DJ went to this after party, and he's like, oh man, it's total debauchery. It's anything you want. There's drugs. There's everything there. And then I noticed that DJ started to get booked at that bar a lot more than I did. And I'm like, so is this what it is now? Like, it's like, it's like
100%.
What a crossroads to be at, right? To be like, I have to go down this road to get more bookings. Like,
but that's how you're built.
More acceptable.
But what it is, not just the club scene. Like, if you look even at like the corporate world, like you were in pharmaceuticals, right?
1,000%.
If you want to book a deal, take a guy out for a couple of drinks.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, go and let your hair down, have a few rum and cokes, and like talk about like just whatever. Yeah. He's gonna book you the next day.
That's what we did.
Yeah, 100%. Right?
Just joking. That's the real. That's real talk.
And I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to like promote alcohol by any means.
No, for
even though I'm a mobile bar service, so please
promote the alcohol.
Yeah, please promote the alcohol. Yeah. No. So, but I do think that there's a balance you have to strike. It's so funny, actually. I got to bring this up because Katrina and I were talking about this the other night. When you're in the corporate world and when you're a new father, the first thing you want to do, like when you like end your shift and you put the kid to bed, and maybe not for you, but for me, was to fucking grab a beer, right?
I can understand that.
Yeah, so you get into this, weird habit where like every night you're grabbing a drink. And then that Friday night's coming. Yeah. So Friday night, that your key boys are coming over, and you're gonna have like 6 to 8 drinks. Yeah. You're gonna binge drink, right? And that's just like your night to let loose, right? And then you rinse and repeat, and you do that like for a year or 2 or 5. That can get dangerous.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And like that kind of had started happening with me, just like without you really noticing it, right? And then I go into the bar industry, in the bar world. And the funniest thing happened is it kind of reversed in the sense that now I know on Saturday I've got a wedding.
Yeah. Yes.
So I can't tie one on Friday.
Yeah.
Right? I've got to keep it limited to like 1 or 2 drinks.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday when I'm at a gig, well, I'm driving there. I'm overseeing the execution of my business and making sure everything's good. So yeah, maybe I'll have 1 or 2 throughout the night, like with the clients and stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I got to drive. So like, it's nothing more than like below driving limit. And then you come home and it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're not having another drink. You're going to sleep.
Exactly.
And then it's Sunday and you spend time with the family.
Yeah.
So ironically, the mobile bar business has actually decreased my level of like alcohol consumption, where you might think that it would increase it because you're like more exposed to like the bars, right?
One of the DJs that I used to DJ with, I'll tell you the name after. So when I first started, and he was a big name at the time when I started, but I would notice his behaviors were odd. Like the club would open at 9:30. And I'd have to be there because I was opening for him, and I'd have to show up there at 9. And him and his buddies would already be there. And I'm like, this guy's weird. I don't know why he's doing this. And he would kind of be like, wouldn't really be partaking in the fun with the alcohol and stuff like that. And it just, over the years, as I watched him, he ended up blowing up and becoming Drake's official DJ. And once it was after I got my second chance, when I look back and I'm like, this guy was playing the business game way back then, being there early. And of course, he was the main DJ that was getting booked. He was getting paid the most. And he was conducting himself in a manner that totally differentiated himself from all of us, because all of us were there for a good time. He was there just, killing it, being professional and going about his carrying himself like
a businessman.
Exactly. And look, he walked his way all the way up to being Drake's DJ. His name is Charlie B now, who's a really popular DJ. Now he's dipping into like producing and stuff like that. But it was really cool to see like how, like for me, that stuff was going over my head as just a young DJ in the game. But
well, I think execution needs to be key to any entrepreneur, right? Like whether it be DJing or videography or mobile bars, right? Like, and that's where the pressure comes in, is you need to execute.
But the problem is with the DJ industry, there's so much bullshit in the industry. Yeah. Sure, strategic ways of going about and meeting people and networking is one thing. But the bar industry, it's like you gotta go down low to know the right people to get those bookings. And I'm sure you've had that experience.
Especially here in London.
And so maybe break that down for those that are listening, because I don't understand what you mean by go down low. Like, do you mean like you just have to like know the back door into the club type of thing, like by that person that's gonna like give you the connection.
But like as Dave mentioned, there's those after parties. Those aren't necessarily the most enjoyable places to be in.
No.
But
you kind of almost have to infuse yourself into it.
You do. Like you notice there were people who were getting bookings just because they were going to after party. And you don't want to be there necessarily. Did you take advantage of any after parties and really dig into that scene, or did you just say, this isn't for me, not worth it?
Yeah, I went to a handful ever, and it just like there wasn't a lot of payoff, because I felt like once I got there, it was like my true self was revealed, and my true self is the one that wished he was in bed 2 hours ago. And it was like, oh, this guy's not like the coolest DJ in the world. He's trying to read a book on the couch. Like, get him out of here. And so like there wasn't a lot of value in there for me, but it was also like, when everybody, it's like, if you worked for 4 hours or you drank for 4 hours and then you go back and you keep drinking at 3:30 in the morning, it's like, if you're not drinking, why are you there, right? And so, there wasn't a ton of value in that for me. And like, I hope they had a great time. I hope people who do that have a great time. It's just like, it's the furthest thing of something I'd want to do.
Just that, like, any interaction you're having is not going to be super memorable to the person that you're interacting with, right? Like, they're just going to know that you were there, and they're going to be like, oh, that guy was lame, or
legit. And and that's how I felt that being there was like, I just don't belong here.
Do you still play clubs?
Yeah, I mean, I should say like I do on rare occasions. I've probably did 3 or 4 this year, and that's like, I'm good with that, right? Like,
So you still DJ yourself?
Yeah.
You play Rock the Park, obviously. That's where I've seen you.
Okay, yeah.
And where else, do you do weddings yourself?
Yeah,
still?
absolutely. So it's funny you say that, because a lot of times, like as I was growing the business, a lot of times people were like, "Oh, that'd be so cool! Like you won't have to DJ at all anymore." I'm like, no, that's not the goal. Like I just want to DJ. I don't want to do payroll and accounting and staffing and scheduling. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to DJ as much as I can, because that is what I love. But like the club scene in London, the bar scene in London is like I had a long run with that. I loved it. But, when I'm there now, I feel like this isn't where I belong.
Where are some of the places you played? To give people perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my career, like I can't think of a single bar in London that I didn't play at. Various length residencies at some of them one-off, some of them like filling in for buddies on off nights or whatever. So yeah, I would say all of them. But then now it's like on any given Friday or Saturday, it's either a private event, like a corporate event, or a wedding. It's very rare that I can send out a message to anybody to say, "Hey, come see me play here." Except for on the concert side of things is like my work with Rock the Park, which is like they're known for their 4 or 5 day festival that they do in London every year, but they do a lot of other stuff, and they're very kind to include me. They do some country stuff out at Delaware Speedway and some other stuff. So yeah, working with that group's been amazing, but that's like, the public side of things I do is not nearly as much as the private side.
So you've been pretty successful. You obviously left your job.
Yeah.
I've heard of you a ton.
Thanks.
And so what were some of the strategies you took to make sure you're successful?
Oh man, how long is this? How is it 4 hours we're going to record? It's there was a lot of things. I'm a huge reader. I love reading. I love reading kind of business books or self-improvement books or autobiographies. I think there's a lot to learn from kind of those 3 genres. And then putting into practice the things I learned from that. So that's probably the number one thing I would say that has contributed towards it. But also having the right team of people, having the right support system at home. It's funny, you mentioned earlier how your wife was like, she was literally the opposite of my wife, who was like, hold on, maybe you shouldn't do this. But you know what? I feel like that's also her job, right? To be like, I got to protect what we've built here. And if you're not going to, then I have to be the grounded one. And that's like, somebody's got to do that, right? Yeah. And I feel like in my world, I was so grounded that it took my wife, who is normally the more logical one, to be like, you got to do this, because
she's more of the risk taker.
I think she's more empowering for others to take risks, in terms of like, she was the one who I think was like, I don't want to be 80 years old with you in the retirement home listening to what you could have done. Like, I don't think I could handle that. So yeah, she was the one who was basically like, you got to do it. But like, I think that's the balance. So you guys have that balance. It's just reversed, right? It's so,
yeah, I'm like, get on board or get run over.
Right, yeah.
And then she's like, hold up there, Mr. Conductor.
Yeah, I'll do neither.
She's like, we're going to slam the brakes here.
Yeah. So I think, having the right support system at home. And it's so funny, because years ago, I had said, actually on a podcast, first time I was ever on a podcast, I said like how my parents had done me a disservice, because they raised me to say like, no matter what, you got to get a job where you work 40 hours a week, you get the pension, the benefits. That's how you've made it. And it wasn't till after I became successful in the DJ world where they're like, okay, now we respect
it. They see the other side.
Yeah. But I was wrong about that, because although that's how they raised me, from a career perspective, they also were the ones who raised me to be like, listen, you can do anything you want to do. Like you want to go to college, you want to go to university, like you just have to put in the work. They taught me how to put in the work for everything. So I had to grow up a little bit.
So I think, and this is a really big topic, I think we could have a whole fucking podcast series on it. But I think looking back on your comment, it's probably not your parents' failure, it's probably the educational system's failure. In the sense that
gets drilled in very hard.
Right, it gets drilled in very hard that you need to go to college, you need to go to university, you shouldn't just jump into entrepreneurship. That's like
it's part of the system.
That's
though,
a bad thing.
It's like they need you that way. That most people have to come out that way, right? Or it won't work.
Exactly. And if you think like, if you look at like the really big creatives out there that have like really done well in entrepreneurship, I think a lot of them would argue that, hey, I didn't need post-secondary necessarily. Like I could have probably like figured it out on my own and
Yeah.
been just as successful, and then like capitalized on those extra years that I had.
Yeah.
I mean, there's arguments both ways, right? Like if I look back at my university career, my lengthy university career, that's not a pat on the back. That's just like a fuck. I was in school for a really
Big
long
part of your
time.
life.
Yeah. You know, like I definitely take a lot of skills out of that.
Yeah.
But it's less the actual like book knowledge that I learned and more of like how did I hold a full-time academic career while holding a full-time job. That is probably what built me up to be more successful, is just like managing your time and those intangibles that came out of being in academia rather than what I actually gleaned out of the books, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. I would agree with that for sure.
When you jumped ship to focus on DJing only, did you have other DJs working with you at that time, or was it just yourself?
Yeah, it was a small group. There was myself and 3 others at that time. And then like I'd left that job in June of 2016. And by the end of the year, we were up to, I think 8 or 9. And that's like when I was kind of, flying by the seat of my pants. I remember like literally the Monday, the week of a wedding, being like, I don't have a DJ for this wedding on Saturday. Like I'm freaking out. And it's like an era that I don't wish to revisit.
So when you, and I think this is probably an interesting area to delve into a little bit, because all entrepreneurs live what you have lived through, where you're kind of growing maybe a little bit too quick.
Realistically.
And you don't have the right structures and processes in place quite yet, right?
Yep.
What was your business structure at the time when you first made the jump? Were you still a sole prop, or were you incorporated? And like, what drove that decision making, and how did that kind of color your business?
Yeah, it was sole prop.
Wow, sole prop with 9 people.
Yep, and it stayed that way right up until about like more than 15 people, like close to 20 people, where I was just kind of I was running the whole business.
Explain to me that, because like you were taking on so much liability.
Yeah, absolutely. I was and so kind of foolhardy to not even realize until I'd heard a story of a guy down in the States who had a wedding go wrong, and all of a sudden it was like his house was in jeopardy. And I'm like, what, how? And he kind of broke it down for me. He's like, this is how. He's like, you got to create, these are 2 different entities, right? So like, no matter what happens in your business, your house is not on the line, right? And your family is not on the line. So yeah, thankfully, he broke that down for me. But a really big turning point for us was me trying to do all this. I had somebody who had been doing kind of a bit of like working the photo booth side of the business and a bit of the admin side of the business. And she was really good at it.
I was just going to ask you that.
And I remember just like, I'd had just week after week of just like pure hell. It was like everything was going sideways. I couldn't keep up with anything. And I remember just like having pain in my chest and being like, something is not right here. And being like, I don't know what a nervous breakdown is, but like it could be this, right? In retrospect, it wasn't, but like who knows how close it was. And again, it's my wife, Amanda, who's like, well, we can't have this. And while I'm explaining,
We can't have any of that.
Yeah. She's like, I do like you. I want to keep you around. But she like, as I'm explaining to her kind of, what I'm feeling, she's messaging this girl and being like, hey, realistically, what is the possibility of you working full time with us? And she was a daycare teacher at the time. That's how I met her. My son she was his daycare teacher.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so she was pretty quick with the response, quicker than I would have been, to be like, let me leave my full time job.
So I'll start tomorrow.
Obviously. Yeah. And so she's our operations manager and now part owner. And her name's Ashley, and she also DJs as well. And she jumped in and she is like, if you could ever think of having somebody in your business, what is the dream person to run this? That's her, right? Like she runs it like it's her own business. Yeah. She runs it, with an incredible amount of respect and empathy, which is like an incredible balance.
So was that the original proposition, was come on board and we'll give you like equity share?
No, it was strictly like an hourly rate that then turned into basically like a salary type position, more or less. And then only recently was it like it turned into an equity thing? And a big part of that is because during the pandemic, she went down to literally 2 hours a day, sometimes less, of just like managing, client emails of like people freaking out. And I said to her, like, as the pandemic went on, I'm like, listen, if you get, if you're looking for something else or you want to go back to daycare, like, no questions asked. I get it, right? And she didn't. Like, she was ride or die.
Real one, yeah.
Yeah. So when we came out of that and kind of came up with this idea to be like, she has very much earned this, and she's the reason that we don't fly by the seat of our pants.
Yeah,
which is great. Yeah, and I think it like goes back to one of the original conversations we had is like finding the right people is so key when you're looking to scale, right? And that can make or break your original kind of scaling plan.
Yeah.
It's like you could be like, have the best intentions to scale, and then that first hire is probably the scariest hire, right? Because that first hire is usually you need like kind of like a jack of all trades. You need someone that's going to like do the admin, but then also like do all the other kind of shit you just need to get done, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably the scariest hire. And if you fuck that one up, then like that could put you behind a couple of years.
Oh my gosh. Like, and jack of all trades, I think you nailed it, because, she started by doing admin, then she grew to like, business management and all, everything, accounting, everything. But the interesting thing is that at one point she had said, she's like, I could never do what you guys do. She's like, I couldn't get behind the decks in front of people. And I'm like, I don't know. What if you just tried it? What if you just like, so we taught her to DJ, and she figured it out very quickly. And, to kind of bring this full circle, she called me one day because I got a message that's like, hey, we're at this party. It's like from an unknown number. It's like, we're at this party, but like, where's your DJ? And I was like, oh shit, like your worst nightmare, right? And I called the DJ wasn't picking up. Finally he picked up. He's like, I'm in a car accident. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, this is like the thing that like, there's no recourse for this, right? And so then she called me and she's like, no, I just heard they called me. There's no DJ. I just finished loading up my car. I'm going to be there in 20 minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, well, this is it, man. Like, what else could I ask for, right?
Yeah,
she can
fucking
literally do all
Superman.
Yeah. And so like,
or Superwoman. I guess.
She saved us a few times back in that era when, we were just flying. But ultimately I think, when it comes to scaling is having the right people in place. But I remember somebody telling me, like, I didn't ever have dreams of building a whole team. I always just thought I'd do it myself. And somebody told me, like, like you don't have to train somebody to be like the same as you. If you can get them to do 80% of the job that you do, that's good enough. They're going to figure out the other 20% on their own. And then also, like, get over yourself. Like, you think you're so good that you're the only one who can do this? Like, this is not rocket science, right? Like, everybody who wants to do this and puts in the work can do it, right? So, you get out of your own way, let other people do it, bring in talent that can do different things better than you can do it, and, the team will flourish.
Yeah, so I think what you're really touching on is like have a level of self-awareness and put your pride aside.
I had to be told that, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we talked about in another podcast with another entrepreneur was sometimes your pride gets in the way of, hey, I thought this was the right hire.
Yeah.
I've now brought them on, and like I was invested in an interview process, and I'm gonna give them a shot, but like your gut is saying just cut them and go, right? And like your pride actually is the one that like kills you there because you let them stick around too long. Yeah. Where you should just be like, no, fuck, they're not good,
and it's
right?
like what is it? Hire slow, fire fast. Like
fail fast is like one of my mottos, right? Just fail fast.
The thing that I didn't realize, and like in having those people on your team and I've kept people on our team longer than we needed to for those reasons because I brought them on board. Other times it's because they'd just been around for so long. And other times it was because I was like, I think this person just like they're having a rough time, but like we'll stick this out and we'll get through this. But like the reality is the part that you don't see is what everybody else on the team is saying and thinking, right? To be like, we just publicly watched this guy mess up 4 times. Or this guy never shows up to training, or this guy does show up to training and he doesn't put any work in. And it's like, other people see that, right? And they're like, okay, well, that's the standard for the company, right? I can be this bad too, and I'm not going to get let go. But I think, this is part of the COVID thing. When we kind of switched our team up, it was like, all right, you guys hopefully saw that, like, the people who weren't putting in 100%, they're not here anymore. So like, that's the expectation, right? Is that we're all putting in our best work. We're all going to mess up.
I remember somebody asking for a raise during COVID, and I was like, I'm glad I'm not on the other side, because you know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with this? Like, bro, there's no gigs.
Yeah, like,
there's
I'll give
no
you a
gigs
raise
out
if we
here,
ever
and it
get
was
back
like,
out.
they're causing a big stink, and it's like.
So actually that brings a really, really good topic. So before you arrived today, we had like kind of an off the record conversation around diversification of income as an entrepreneur. And one of the things I was talking to these two guys about was, hey, we should approach our businesses no differently than you approach your own personal finances, right? Nobody is encouraged to just have your like bread and butter full-time job and nothing else, right? Everybody encourages you to have an RSP and a pension plan and a TFSA and real estate and all these other kind of streams of income. Should be no different as an entrepreneur, right? You should be looking for ways to like hedge against risk in your business by diversifying your income streams. So in the DJ industry, what is one of the ways that you can diversify your income stream? Aside from, like, we've already talked about producing music. Aside from like producing music.
Yeah. Well, the easiest ones, I think, are to say, like, okay, as a DJ, once you've established yourself, you should be out every Friday and Saturday, like, if that's your goal, right? Like, those are the easiest nights to get booked on. So the thing I've seen others do is to say, like, all right, well, you know what I'm going to learn? I'm going to learn how to host karaoke, because that's always Mondays and Tuesdays, right? So like, let me get that Monday and Tuesday money. And then, what's Thursdays? Is that something, a lot of places, Wednesdays and Thursdays in London is like music trivia night, right? To say like, okay, let me learn how to host that. But like, to me, that's ultimately the same. And that's still hard to scale, because that's still, you out 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week. So you can diversify your income, but like it's ultimately still the same thing. It's still the DJ side of things, right? So I think the natural next step for a lot of businesses in the weddings corporate side of thing is photo booths, and that's something that, like, we bought our first photo booth, 10 years ago, and I remember the guy said he had already had an established photo booth, and he said to me, he's like, here's the price if you want to buy it. I did want to buy it. And then I didn't move on it for about 2 months. And he came back to me and he cut the price almost in half. And he's like, listen, I can tell photo booths are fading. They're almost done. And he's like, I don't feel right selling you this at full price. I'm going to sell this at half price. And that was like our photo booth business has never decreased. Every year it increases, right? So it's like, I don't know how long photo booths are going to be popular, but like, it's for the foreseeable future anyway. And then, beyond that is to say, like, all right, what else makes sense? For us, we introduced kind of these custom letter tables. A couple of years ago, we introduced audio guest book. I
love audio guest books, by the way. When I film weddings, I take clips of that audio, and I'm like, this is amazing to just include, because it takes the work off me, but I get content for the videos.
Yeah. And then I became a licensed reverend back in 2017. And that's
I saw a video of you in it a couple weeks ago.
It's
explain that a little bit,
man. So it's to make the jump from DJ to reverend is like, I get that, I get that that's a pretty big gap. The way it happened is because, like, when we DJ, a lot of times we're DJing the music for the ceremony. That's where our day starts. And I used to watch people do it and be like, I was like 27 years old. I'm like, maybe one day I could do this, right? Like, and also in the back of my head, like, there's a shelf life on DJing. There just is, right? Yeah. And it's like, at a certain point, either you're going to decide to leave or the industry is going to tell you it's time to leave. But at a certain point, and it's like, so I'm trying to think, what would be next? But the interesting thing that happened is I was there playing music for a ceremony. Ceremony was supposed to start at 3:00. And this is the wildest story, because the groom's side, whatever the background was, he was supposed to be married at a certain place. He wasn't supposed to be getting married on a patio at a golf course. That was like, the religion would not be happy with that. And so he had said to his friends and family, listen, everybody, you're going to come at 4. Okay. That's when this starts. The ceremony was at 3. Her family was there at 3 for the ceremony. But the idea is that when his family got there, they would not say a word about the wedding. This would just be a celebration, and nobody on his side of the family was to know. I don't know how on earth they were going to pull this off, but this is what I was told. So like, I wasn't going to use the word wedding at all. 3:00, the ceremony is supposed to happen. No officiant shows up, and
I know where this is going.
People are sweating, and then we're getting to about 3:30.
And you're like, I'm a reverend.
Well, I was not, but it was like, it was so crazy that like they had the front doors locked and the family started to arrive, and the poor staff was out there being like, we're just a little behind on setting up. We'll be opening shortly. And meanwhile, like there's this full-blown wedding about to happen out back, and his family doesn't know anything about it. And I remember thinking, man, imagine what a hero I could be right now if I was like, I got it from here, everyone, right? Like,
Oh, so you weren't a reverend yet.
no, I was not a
Oh,
reverend,
goddamn it.
but that's what spurred me to be like, let me just go get licensed, and no
In
plan.
case this
in
happens
case it ever
again.
happens again. And to this day, that was 2017. It has not happened yet.
And is it a difficult licensing process?
Yeah, man, it's been a wild ride. So the last license I got was, it's a year-long process. It's like you got to read, you got to study, you got exams, interviews. It's a whole thing. But ultimately, my goal with this is to say, like, when the industry tells me it's time to not be a DJ anymore, as far as I can tell, you can officiate a wedding until you're like 100. So I'll be
I'm
good.
glad you brought that up with the shelf life. It's like we all know there's an internal clock that's ticking, and it's like,
Don't know when it. Yeah.
I do want to go back to something you said about scaling the business and like the days of the week.
Yeah.
And then you kind of made the comment to say, oh yeah, well, if you don't want to do that, then like you can't really scale the business.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree fundamentally with that.
Yeah.
Because why not just find specialists in that space that work under you, and then you're capitalizing off of them?
I think, like, for me, I'm speaking from a place of inexperience to say, like, I hosted a couple dozen karaoke nights ever. And like, so I never got it to the point where I could be like, let me step aside and have somebody else host it. So I don't know what that journey looks like versus on the DJ side of things, which I have done. And I've never hosted music trivia. So like, I don't know what that looks like either.
Yeah, but you never owned a photo booth until you owned a
Well,
photo booth.
and I think you're right. I think you could scale it. I think part of the problem though is that, like, even in the bar scene on any given Saturday night, you probably get about 20 DJs in London working at a bar. I think maybe 30 at the most. Whereas like you got 2 bars doing karaoke on Monday. So it's like, I just think the scalability is just a lot less.
But why are you confining yourself to London?
Well, I mean, if that's what your goal is, right? But I think like I think ultimately, like, I'm sure some seasoned karaoke.
I'm just being the devil's advocate.
No.
Right?
And I think, like, it's not to say that it's not a realistic avenue. I think there's just way more potential in DJing than karaoke.
I also think too when it comes to
is there a DJ company that's like Ontario wide?
not that I
That is a good
Yeah,
question. I've never even thought about that.
I think
don't
most
so.
companies would say they'll go for a price Ontario wide, but there's not anybody I know that's like set up shop in.
What I'm saying is that you've scaled your business to a point where you've got your processes so down packed that you don't even need to DJ anymore. You've got
Right.
guys in your spot that are doing it in London
Yep.
and then
The,
doing it
the
in
thing
Kitchener
is though,
and doing
like,
it in
here's the
Kitchener.
thing with which is it's why it's hard to scale, because sometimes when you're like what you're talking about with the karaoke and whatnot, that's you as a person going in there and building that relationship with those venues, right? When you're talking about bringing somebody else in, you gotta go through that process. And I don't know, it's almost like, would that take too much time and effort to do? That there's easier ways to scale. Like, it's easier to scale on the wedding side of things than I think it is with the club. So I think what scaling in the club side of things would look like is like Premier
Not
Life.
even that. Even the weddings. What about an Ontario-wide wedding DJ company? It would require a large investment, a very large investment,
It doesn't.
to
Yes,
have
it
the
does.
administration behind it.
Yes, it does.
Because
Because
as
there's
Dave
more than one
mentioned,
there's more than one
he
model.
there's problems when it's like, what happens when somebody doesn't show up?
Yeah.
Then that's a big problem. Now that's a big problem within London, let alone Ontario. You would have
There's more
so
than
many
one
problems.
model though.
There is,
You're-
but
you're right.
now you're think about high-end restaurants in London. Those aren't chains. Sure, there's the Keg and Chop, but realistically, the quality compared to like something like Garlic's is completely different. So
Okay, so
on the scalability level, on the scalability level, you gotta.
I'll explain to you what my business scaling model is like, kind of like out of the box thinking. And like, I think this is where you could scale in the events industry is you can scale through acquisition, probably very successfully, in the sense that, so you're DJ Alpha Entertainment. I keep forgetting.
What do you talk? Wait. What do you talk about?
Hold on.
Through acquisition? What does that mean?
So I'm about to explain it. So the DJ Alpha company, let's just say there's a guy in Kitchener doing a really similar thing to what you're doing right now. He wants out, right? So, and he's, DJ Sparkles Entertainment, right? So now you're like, okay, I've got the money, I've got the cash flow, I'm buying out DJ Sparkles. So now you have him and his 15 DJs, okay? What you're gonna do is not turn that into DJ Alpha.
Right.
What you're going to do is you're going to stay the owner of DJ Sparkles Entertainment, and to the consumer base, it's going to remain DJ Sparkles Entertainment, and you're just going to hire out
DJ Sparkles.
Whatever, man. You're just going to hire out basically like a manager of that operation, and then you're going to just take a little tiny bit of the profit, and then you're going to create a profit sharing model.
It's what he said. You need a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you scale your business successfully enough in your own local market, then you can do that. Then you got the cash flow to do that.
You know, now that I think about it, I think that's probably the most realistic way to do it. Than try to say, let me step foot in Kitchener and grow from day one, right? It's
scratch.
I don't want to from day one.
Yeah.
But now that you mention it, I can't think of any vendor in the wedding space that operates provincially.
Right.
It's all local.
It's all over.
Because as you mentioned, nobody wants to go back to day one.
No, because that's the wrong model.
Right. But now that you're mentioning it, that's not a bad approach.
That's not the wrong, because you can't approach it in the same way you approached your scaling model in your own local market.
But how many, this is the other problem. How many businesses in the wedding industry have the back end to be able to actually sell their business?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Like, you need exit planning to be able to make your business sellable, which is extremely rare in the wedding industry because it's a handful of small businesses that don't actually have.
I was
their shit
listening to
together
an interview from a billionaire, and he said one of the biggest mistakes that people do is that they become emotionally attached to their businesses. So people have a hard time, like what you're talking about, letting go. It's this whole thing how like ownership is such a big deal amongst people that you got to own 100% of this and 100% of this. Like, people don't want to look at it from maybe you like you're saying, like, sell, and now you don't have to get up and go to work every day to make money, right? When you sell, that's what I'm assuming would happen, right?
Yeah, but
So let's put it this way: if you were to sell tomorrow, would you be able to present something to a buyer?
100%.
Well, I mean, there's some very tangible stuff like our, inventory, our hard assets, right? But like even that, like what amortized over 5 years, I don't know what I'd pay for it right now. But to say like, okay, if you're gonna buy us, what you're buying is our name and our process. Our process is very well documented. That I could, if you said tomorrow, if you said Ashley is a bum, I'm gonna do this job, I can teach you that job with all of the, I mean, granted, she prepared it, but either way. But like, so there is something tangible there. Now, to me, is like, I think if you were to really kind of look into a DJ company, you'd be like, I don't know, we're looking at like 25% to 30% margins on this. It, to me, definitely seems heavily personality based. It could be anybody's personality, but it's like the person who buys it would have to want to run it, I think.
Right.
I don't think they'd want to buy it and say, you guys keep doing what you're doing, I'm going to sit at home.
Yeah,
I think they'd have to want to be hands-on. Is my guess.
I would say that is a huge, huge reason, especially in a city like London, why, it's not why certain businesses do well, but it's like the events industry, weddings, corporate, a lot of it is based off relationships. You know what I mean? So I don't know what happens when you take that person out of the equation. Does that change?
It's also like if you compare it to a restaurant. You have a recipe. You could hire a chef to cook that recipe. You already have people who go to the restaurant. You have things put in place. With DJing, it's so different also. It's like you can't build a recipe for how to play music at a wedding.
But I
So what
also
happens
think
if-
that there's an opportunity in the restaurant industry where, here's where I think the opportunity is. So every fucking little town like Dutton has a like mom and pop shop, right? In like all of the rural areas, and like we've all seen them come up for sale at some point.
Yeah.
So where the opportunity is for like this multinational to like buy that restaurant, keep the name, keep the like local customers going to that restaurant, because nothing is changing. The menu's not changing, but what's changing is the processes, and the processes are successful, and the processes build margins. And the process of that like conglomerate is what's going to drive
talk
that.
English. I didn't understand anything you said just now.
Sure. But the problem
But nobody's done that.
The problem is that it's
In the restaurant
super difficult to keep those processes because very few people have those processes written down.
Well, not just that,
Right.
And again, it boils down to the model, right? What is the incentive of the folks running the business, boots on the ground? If I'm just a manager, your incentive is like close to nothing. But if you build a really strong profit sharing model where like the more that restaurant, we're going to use the restaurant as an example, the more that restaurant makes, the more that profit center manager, so that business manager actually takes home, then they have an incentive to grow that business like they own it. Right? So you've got to build a business model where if you went into the Kitchener market with your DJing company, that whoever is going to be in that seat that you have in London is trying to build it like they own it. And if you can build that model successfully, you're going to be able to branch it out as far as you want to build.
You know what? I apologize. You're right. Because now as I'm going through like the archives in my brain, I have seen somebody scale a DJ business, and they scaled it pretty well. They've actually opened, I want to say maybe even like 4 locations. You might know him. He's
Like 4
DJ.
different cities?
Yeah, 4 different cities. It's obviously it's in the States. So I like to think like Canada
See, that's
is
the
like
thing. I hear
behind.
a ton of stories about America, but nothing ever in Canada.
And I don't know, I feel like we're behind when it comes to a lot of things, like whether it's trends and also like just in that mindset of thinking. Because even me at first, I'm like, nope, can't be done. But the more you're talking, I'm like, you know what? That does make sense. And it can be done. So whoever is going to be the first to do it, obviously will be laying down a path for others, but it's important to have that type of thought process.
Being the first to any market is like really tough, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, London is literally the test market
it
for
is.
gas prices and other restaurants, everything, right? Because Londoners are hard-headed, man. Like, if you can make it in London, you can make it in a lot of other places. So, I mean, that kind of works in our benefit if this is where we started.
So you're right? Like the mobile bar industry in the US is actually pretty robust.
Yeah.
Whereas in Canada, it's not well developed. Like even if you look at the GTA and Ottawa, which are our 2 biggest markets in Canada, I think Ottawa probably has the most mobile bars, and they're sitting at like 7 to 10 mobile bar businesses for the entire Ottawa region, which is not a lot. If you look at like London and surrounding area, we're maybe at like 2 to 3 big players in mobile bars, which for like 400,000 to 500,000 people is like, there's a lot of pie there to eat, right?
Yeah.
Like, right. And if you look at like DJs, you're like 100 people, like 100 DJs, like that's being like conservative. Like everybody's trying to get their little slice, right?
Yeah.
So, but the DJ world is a little bit more navigated, so kind of what are the pitfalls to avoid, what are the places that are lucrative. You guys kind of have all that figured out.
Yeah.
Whereas the mobile bar industry is like very new, right? Like we're like 10 years old as an industry.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to navigate AGCO laws, trying to navigate like what we can and cannot do. What is your most lucrative business model?
Yeah.
How do you scale effectively?
Yeah.
Can you even scale it? Right? So like that's the biggest challenge of like a nascent industry.
I wonder, is that your advantage? Is it, if you talk to any given 27-year-old and you're like, so how many weddings this year? You went to 6 weddings as a guest this year. You're going to go to 4 more next year. And then you're going to get married after that. You've been to 15 weddings. And let me guess, golf course, reception, inside, ceremony outside, bar standard, comes with the package. Let me guess, DJ, probably one of the following 3 photographers. Anyway, you get the point. But for you to come in and see, like, you know what you haven't seen is you haven't seen what we do. So if you want your wedding to stand out from the last 10 you went to, that's where we come in. I don't know. Is that the advantage that you have?
100%, right? Like, so everybody can hire a bartender, right?
Yeah.
Bartenders all do the same thing. What they're hiring when they hire us is an experience, right? Like they're getting a horse trailer that like is like on this like big expansive property that's like on farmland. Like it looks like really cool, right? So the guests are getting an experience.
Yeah.
The other thing that you're getting is that like all 3 of us as founders are super engaged with the event itself. Like the last wedding we were at, like my one business partner is Costa Rican. So like when that like Hispanic music was playing, he actually went on the dance floor and danced with the mother of the bride.
I love it.
Like everybody was like, so like in love with that concept, right? Like there's like an engagement between the vendor and the guest, right? So
you have to merge with the clients. That's one thing I've noticed is like a lot of people end up they're like, oh, it's business. Let's take on whoever we want. But the people who do that end up slowly realizing, like yourself as well, it's like, let's not do quantity over quality. Let's figure out who we merge well with, who do we vibe with. That way the wedding day is gonna go so much smoother because you actually understand the client, you have similar perspectives on things, and you work well together. It ends up working better for everybody.
There's a trend that's been going around lately with some of these sites give out like little tips for the brides to save money on their wedding. And a lot of them I've noticed have been putting in cut out the DJ and just get some type of service where you allow the family to, you know, like how do you...
a playlist or something?
Yeah, well, they just provide you with the station and your family can play music off it. And like, I don't know, how do you...
I mean, I don't like that idea, right? Like even if you look at like our very like humble launch party that we had here in the backyard, like I still booked a DJ, right? Because I think that a DJ, if they're good, will be able to understand what's going on in the crowd, and you shouldn't have that burden as a host to have to manage the vibe and like if everybody's having a good time, is everybody vibing in the music? That shouldn't be like an additional pressure point. So like that would be my rebuttal to that like
By the
argument.
way, did I mention that there's an app that does that? It also sits there.
I don't think it does.
No, seriously, it mixes
I'm giving you guys
plays
props.
all
You
the
guys
bangers.
would definitely
And
do a
then,
better job.
Hold on. It gets better. Okay?
Come on, what,
You
is there a
get your
camera with AI that's scanning the crowd?
You get your guests to download the app and they can put in their music suggestions through the app from their phone, so it gets rid of that
that's kind of
friction
crazy.
between
but still, not
having to go up and ask for the
that's
song.
really
That's
interesting.
bad for so many reasons. So okay, let's just use your example. Like hypothetically.
Yeah.
I'm like not feeling like Shania Twain. So I'm like, I want to hear I Just Had Sex by Lonely Island. Right? So fucking AI is going to be like,
You could probably put it, you could.
But-
I'm assuming in this app you could put a do not playlist.
Probably. Yeah, and
Section,
also, yeah,
and
that's a
then
good.
it knows where
probably.
not to go.
But what I was gonna say is,
They're
I don't
not
know,
gonna know not
if
to
people are gathered, then they probably share similarities in musical taste. So
This is what I think though.
yeah.
I've killed a wedding by making a specific request. I personally,
Can we just take a moment to appreciate the self-awareness that you knew you killed it? Like,
I've personally killed a dance floor.
yeah.
Right? Like I remember vividly at like my cousin's wedding because the song was huge at the time. I was so adamant because me and my other cousin were so like hype on the song. I was like, you gotta play Now You're Gone by Bass Hunter. And
It's a hard sell.
Another song I don't know. I've never heard that
I kid
song.
you not. The fucking song hit, and it was just me and my cousin.
Right,
on the dance.
yeah.
Right?
Stayed on the dance floor though, right?
100%.
Better,
Some
yeah.
people are like, I didn't
I can't.
Yeah.
As a DJ, I'm always like,
Yeah.
You better, you're eyeing that person down.
I owned it.
Yeah.
I owned it. I was like, fuck. I
Yeah.
was like, how is nobody feeling this right now? I was like, I guess we're the only two.
This is a thing. Brides and grooms have to understand that vendors are a massive part of the wedding day. And they spend a lot of their portion of that day with those vendors. Like especially photographers and videographers. DJs, I'm sure too, they interact a lot with you guys. And it's like, from a wedding videographer perspective, I'm with them from the moment they get ready to the end of the day. It's like, we have to have some kind of connection. Because that's a massive part of their day and how much enjoyment they're going to get from it. So
I want
it's
to go
not
back
just
to
important for you guys, but for the bride and groom.
the question that you asked. I'll be quick. So instead of scaling in terms of size, why can't you just scale in terms of price? The more you're getting popular, then just up the price.
No, but that's what he's doing right now, right?
Yeah.
So that's his scale model, right? Is that you get to a point where you gain enough. And sorry, I might be taking words out of your mouth.
So far, you're right.
But you get to a point in your business model where you can pick and choose your clients, right? You can say, listen, this is the threshold that I'm setting, and this is the type of clients I want to align with, and this type of brand I'm trying to build in this like market, and then like. You can do that and you have the luxury to do that. The reality is that most vendors don't have that luxury, right? Like I still have price sensitive clients. And if I get a price sensitive client, likely what I'm going to do is I'm going to price them out of using me.
So how far outside of London do you go? What's the furthest wedding you would actually realistically do?
I mean, we've done weddings in New York and California if the circumstances are right. Yeah, but like it's like if you looked at kind of everywhere we DJ in a year, there's one of those, and then there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds like within 50 kilometers of London, kind of thing. Like Sarnia, and then Kitchener. That's
so. As you've been increasing your prices, have you seen a change within the London market in terms of like, have you priced yourself out? How have you adjusted your price? Because I'm sure you've seen what's happened as you've been changing your prices.
Yeah, well, that goes back to, failures that we were talking about earlier, right? So in 2018, I went to a Tony Robbins course called Business Mastery in Vegas.
How did you find that?
Like, I can't say enough good things
Revolutionary?
about it. Yeah, it was worth $1 million. Absolutely it was. But in that course, I kind of, started drinking the Kool-Aid to be like, I am worth whatever I say I'm worth. And so I believed it, which is the first step. But step 2, which I kind of missed, was getting everyone else to believe it. So I just said, listen, last year's price is not next year's price. And I said, this is it. And then nobody agreed with me. Nobody thought I was worth the new price. And so I said, all right, well, let me start. So I really upgraded my setup. So I got like a custom DJ table. I upgraded my lighting game. And I said like, okay, now you get this included. But like equipment's equipment. You can go buy it. It doesn't matter, right? Like it's, it is what it is. It creates a great visual, but that was only part of the equation. The other part of the equation was like, let me really nail the thing that I think a lot of people aren't putting the work into, and that was the MC public speaking side of things. So I joined Toastmasters. I took more courses from, through officiating, and I said, the value that I bring to this is like, I'm confident in my DJ skills, but let me act as your host, as your MC, and do things there that I haven't seen other people do, and putting that whole package together, and then saying, okay, now this whole package is worth this price, and then people started to agree, right? So when you're kind of asking about how and when those prices go up, that was the thing that like I did it backwards. I should have improved all those skills and then put the price up. Instead, I did it backwards. Had a few hungry months, but thankfully I figured it out.
Yeah, and I think what you're touching on is a concept that is kind of like marketing 101, where clients don't buy features, they buy benefits.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So they don't care. I mean, they care, but like if you've got the latest, greatest DJ table, great. That's a feature.
Yeah, cool.
Right?
Thanks for bringing it.
Thanks for bringing it. The benefit is that you can speak at the wedding.
Right.
And you can speak in an eloquent way, where that's value add, and that's actually like a competitive advantage that you might have over 80% of the other DJs out there, right? The other thing that we do that's a little bit different that I would say than any local mobile bar business is they might have a photographer there, they might actually have a videographer there, but day of, because we're looking for content, our clients are getting instant content.
There's value there, absolutely.
Because we're doing content in a very different way than the guests that are there, right? Yeah. So we're doing content to create like really high quality reels, and like we're sharing it instantly, we're sharing it next day, so that when they're waiting for Paul for 3 months.
Hey, nope. Don't you go there. My wife started working with me at weddings, and actually, rather than next day, we tag them so quickly that the bride's like, "Don't be posting that. People can't see me yet." I learned.
So how long is it now? Like, what's the turnaround for like a videography, like for
Videography, that besides the point, my wife loves her phone and she takes pictures and videos of everything. So even though she's usually the second shooter for me, but she's there with her phone capturing everything.
So she's doing what we're doing too, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great value add for your business.
Posting it, tagging the bride and groom, they get a live feed that they could share to their story.
I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's a new vendor at weddings now. They're called content creators, and brides
It's
are
crazy.
just hiring
literally
these
just saw this
people.
last week.
Yeah, and they're just taking footage and they're uploading it.
They're literally,
it goes straight,
they have your phone and they're
So if you
personal
hire
assistant.
us as a mobile bar, you're going to get that basically as part of the mobile.
which is smart,
Yeah. And it's like, that's what people want right now, right? I don't know what they're going to want in 2 years, but that's what they want right now.
And that's, so 80% of my bookings come from Instagram. Because, you know, as our Instagram following is growing, I'd like to think that like my clients are seeing that like, hey, when an event is on the Saturday, I'm seeing all this content coming through, and then the Sunday morning, I'm seeing all this content coming through, and it's really good, like quality content. My event's coming up in 6 months. I want to book them. Because I know I'm going to get that content, right? And like we put a lot of, or at least I do most of the marketing on the social media side. I put a lot of time and effort in making sure that it's quality, right? Like I don't want to just like throw something up there. Like I want it to be something that like would be engaging for me if I interacted with the content.
That's
right?
worth revisiting.
Yeah, exactly, right? Absolutely. So that's I think another way to add value is to just think creatively about like, hey, what's cutting edge, right? And that's like a benefit rather than a feature, I would say.
Where do most of your leads come from?
Word of mouth is still our number one way. Typically a DJ is kind of 5th or 6th on the vendor totem pole. So anybody above us, a venue, a photographer, typically a caterer, trying to maintain a good relationship with them to get those referrals. But wedding planners, we have there's lots of great wedding planners in London area. The very incredible company that we work with, 12 Night Events, is they're very, very good at referring us. To the point, like literally yesterday, I got a text that's like, book July 20th. And it's like, no context at all. But like, that's like, what else could I couldn't ask for a better scenario, right? And so, they take great care of us. But going back to that discussion of like, connecting yourself with the right people for the lane you want to be in, like they do the kind of weddings that if you look at their content, if I were to say, listen, I want to be in a high-end wedding, you would say like, okay, you two should be working together, right? And so, thankfully for us, that's been a very beneficial relationship.
How, now I'm glad we're on this topic now, because that's like basically preferred vendors, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel like you handle preparing your DJs to work with a vendor like that? Because I know like there's
You're not at every single wedding.
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
other DJs
Yeah.
there on your behalf, right?
Yeah, and it is legit something that I learned. Like I had to learn that we had to prepare for, because I thought like, oh, well, they worked with me last week. It went okay. So, this week they go work with Joe and it should be fine as well. Not realizing that like, for Joe to be like, well, you better show them the respect because they're the reason that you're there. Yeah. So like, don't act like, don't walk in there like you own the place, right? Like they own the place. So yeah, to train them to kind of, act right. And then also to be like, realize what your role is here. Like your job is to support them and to stay in your lane. Whereas like some venues we go to and it's like, the door's unlocked, but you don't see anybody all night. Like they've hired a catering company. Maybe there's like a security guy at the front door who doesn't know the answer to anything. And like, there's no staff there all night. So like your job is like, now you're everything. You're coordinator, you're in charge of grandma's keys when they get lost. Like you do everything. So to kind of know those distinctions between the two, to say like, work accordingly with the vendors based on the relationship, right? Yeah.
How big of a role does social media play for you?
That's interesting that you asked that, because for us, it was the thing that launched us back in like the early 2010s. that got me to be able to go full time and then to bring others in to be part of this. And then it kind of got to the point where it's like it felt redundant, and I was making posts and they were getting like, you know, single digit likes, and I'm like, I don't see any value in this. And this is probably like pandemic era, where I just basically like months at a time, like not only did I not post, I didn't even have the app on my phone, right? And like I just wouldn't check it, and I didn't see any value in it. Finally now I feel like it's come back around that it's like it's hard to promote our service during a pandemic when nobody can use the service, right? And so, you know, finally it came back around where I'm seeing real value from it. But like everything changed. I set up earlier this year, like actually probably around this time last year, I set up scheduled posts for the whole year, and watching the performance on those things, like a static photo is just like, it better be a great static photo.
Yeah. It's gotta be reels.
Yeah, like to the point where it's like, I don't know if you should abandon static posts altogether, but like bump it as far down as you can. And like we went out and recorded the video you were referring to earlier, like the officiating video. Mm-hmm. We recorded a dozen of those, and like literally one of them I posted, and it didn't get that many views. Like it was like, I think combined on all, like from all the channels, maybe 5,000. Like I'm getting overrun by like actual creators left and right. But like from that, like 6 direct messages and 5 emails within 24 hours of posting that video. And my officiating side of my business is not like, it's not the most popular side of the business, right? But I'm like, this is it. This is what people want, and I think it's kind of all they want right now. You know what I mean? Like
we as a company like spoke about just like stepping our social media game up in a sense, like just getting guys to, because it's hard, right? As a DJ, you're behind the decks. You're seeing a whole bunch of viral moments. Like for example, the guy that you posted with the dance moves. A couple weeks back, I had a guy that was like, you know, heavier set dude, but really light on the feet. Yeah. You know, and it was really graceful to watch on the dance floor. Yeah. And I had a good mind to do it, but I just didn't get to it, and I forgot.
Because you're busy.
You got it, and I saw the stats on it, and it looked good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you just gotta find the time to like get your camera or your phone.
You just
out.
gotta always be thinking, like it's dumb, right? Like
it's so dumb. I fucking hate it. I honestly hate thinking about having to capture these things because you want to. I'm a true believer.
But you got to be thinking like a reel, right? So like the wedding I was at last weekend, I was like, I got to take this 3-second shot of this chicken. Literally a fucking chicken.
Yeah.
Because the chicken is part of the venue. So I had to like fucking do a 3-second shot of the chicken because I knew it was going to be part of like my fucking
the attention.
12-second reel.
Yeah.
And that was going to be a clip in it.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I know. I want to live in the moment. I'm always an advocate about like, put the phone away, enjoy it.
Same.
Just screw everything.
Pocket. What do you need?
But like in business, it's like you gotta have the content now. Content is literally.
You know
so
what? This is one thing I will give GTA vendors over us, because the GTA, they're so good at getting that content.
Yeah, they are.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know where these guys find time. Do they have somebody there that's just, their job is just to get content? You know, because if you're working just as much as I'm working, how are you finding time to do that?
I'm in the video business, and I'm like struggling with the BTS side of things, like capturing the little things.
I will say to you, I'm going to actually like say something controversial right now. Yeah. When my jobs get booked, a lot of times I'm booking for one bartender, but I'm sending 2 staff. I'm not billing the client for that second staff, but that second staff is there to maybe help set up.
I'm glad you brought this up.
But the first 2-3 hours is just them getting content.
Dude. Interesting.
Right? And like a lot of times I'll go to gigs where I don't need to go to gigs. Like the wedding we did last weekend, it was 40 people.
Yeah.
Right? But I got so much great content because we were 3 staff.
Yeah.
I was the 3rd staff. I was useless as tits on a bull, but I was great for getting content.
Yeah.
So that's why I got such great content from that wedding.
Yeah.
Was because I had the luxury of time to be able to fucking take clips of chickens and like guys dancing and like all this other stuff. Yeah. And that's what like blew up on social media, right?
I'm curious to know what you think about this. I've been meaning to ask you this. I just haven't gotten, we don't even like, we work together, but it's not like we're on the phone every day talking.
Yeah.
So States is really big on minimum 2 guys per event. And it's a trend for them because not only are you getting set up,
what do you mean, as
quicker.
A DJ?
Yeah, so it's DJs, and they also handle the grand entrances together, ceremonies.
Really? I've
It's
never heard of
yeah,
that.
I actually a lot of
big in
them.
the States.
Yeah, a lot of
Oh,
them
wow.
offer 2-man teams. So I noticed for me personally, I was off because of my leg, right? So my girlfriend had to help me with a lot of different jobs, but my social media game went to another level just because I had her there to take all these videos and whatnot.
Yeah.
So like, would you ever consider the 2-man?
I've definitely I've kind of looked at it. I haven't found the right angle to say like, you know, somebody in that has to be getting the short end of the stick in terms of a paycheck, right? Because like, you know, you can't pay both the guys the full amount. But I don't know how that shakes out. Like one of them typically is called an assistant, even though it seems like they're doing about as much as the actual DJ. So like I don't know how to get there, but I love it. And it kind of goes back to like having like, okay, your DJ is your DJ, but then the other guy is an MC and he sometimes DJs, right? And like there's a real value there. I just haven't figured out kind of where that
I
fits in.
went as far as to, because I like to do my research. So I went to the website. I'm like, how much are these guys charging?
Yeah.
They're charging way more.
Yeah.
Their packages start. The lowest was about 2,500. But that budget is a lot bigger for it's, and I think that's because of that second person. So they've
Well, now you're
worked that
dealing with
in.
weddings where there's so much more coordination
But
required, where they're going to have
the
bigger
points
budgets
that they do
naturally
have
anyway.
in when they're charging more is they're able to do more advanced setups because of the 2-man team.
That's absolutely true, yeah.
So their setups look much better than people like gigs that only have the one person setting up, right?
Let's say you have like a photo booth already set up or you're going to have a photo booth later in the wedding.
Oh,
just pay that guy to be there earlier on in the day. And
or you can pay them for like 4 hours to come in at an hourly rate and get them to help stay in order for them to get like the last and maybe the ceremony and then the grand entrance, and then they could go off on their own.
That's the other way you can scale your business from a DJ perspective, and this coming from someone who knows fucking fuck all about DJing, but is probably to create like a DJ academy if that doesn't already like exist, right? Because there's no like, you're not gonna get a fucking co-op out of Fanshawe for DJing. That just doesn't exist right now.
can you?
Probably.
Yeah,
I feel like
they
Fanshawe
come
does
through
have
like
something.
from music industry arts or whatever, but like
They got like a producing course. I
yeah,
think.
there's not a ton of people who are like, I want to go DJ weddings. Like when you start to DJ weddings, they're like, I'm never gonna go to weddings.
That stream's going to be so low of like the amount of volume of people that you need, right? So
Yeah.
what you actually need to do to scale your business and make it effective is to do like what Kyle was talking about. So we brought in like a bartender and he created a bartending academy.
Yeah.
And that created like a stream of income for him.
Yeah.
So you would almost need to have like establish like the London DJ Academy.
Yeah.
And like what that does is that creates these entry level roles in your organization where you can afford to have a 2-man team. Because as part of their training and as part of their co-op, it's a requirement to do a certain amount of weddings.
Yeah.
And that would be like the number 2. And that's how you keep your costs down, but then you add the value to your customer.
Yeah, I think
and then
that
you're
would
still
be a
adding an
smart way.
additional value to that co-op, because then they're going to graduate at some point and then they're going to graduate into your organization.
Yeah.
So that's probably a viable way to scale your business.
I would think that might be the answer.
Encyclopedia.
It's a perfect time to ask this question, which we ask every guest.
Yes.
If you were to get $10,000 and completely start your business from scratch, how would you invest
With
it?
all the knowledge that you have
You still
now.
have the knowledge that you have today.
Okay.
You've been able to read all the books that you've already read.
Yeah.
But now you're starting at kind of day one, right? Now you've got that infusion of like 10K and you know, hey, I want to DJ and I want to build a DJ business.
Yeah.
How do you invest that money?
I mean, assuming I have nothing, I literally have to use some of this to buy gear to do that. I would invest a pretty good amount in a nice looking setup because the feedback I've gotten on that has been fantastic. So I do think there's a worthy investment there. And assuming that I have the relationships that I have, or no,
Yes.
is I would invest the rest of that back into relationships. Like I can't tell you how much a gift card to a wedding planner for dinner for her and her husband, or tickets to a concert, like how much I've got that back over time. So the rest of it, I would just put that back into relationships. And I think like to me, that's probably the easiest way to get return on the dollar.
So that's the fastest we've ever gotten an answer, man.
I'm assuming at least half that's going to go towards equipment, if not more.
Yeah,
then
probably
the
half
other is
realistically.
gonna be
But like
basically-
the thing I found is like that totem pole that I was talking about. Like when a venue refers us, there's almost nothing I can do to repay that, right? But if I can say, listen, why don't you and your husband go out for dinner next Friday to that restaurant that you mentioned you love, or even here's a bottle of wine you mentioned you like this, like some sort of gift back that is like not associated with events. As like I can't thank you, I can't repay you this business, but let me thank you in a different way.
He'll get me involved in like a bunch of gigs, and I'm like, fuck, like how do I return the favor? And for me, it's I can advertise his business on my page, or you know what I mean. But like you're saying, you're right. By the time the person's got their DJ, they already found their caterer, they found their photographer.
Sending me and Katrina for dinner?
Looks like I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, legit though, legit. It's a valuable thing, I think. Yeah. As long as you're not doing it in a sleazy way.
How much of that comes from your corporate sales background?
Maybe all of it.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the keys that come out of moving out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship. You kind of get to know how business and relationships work, and you understand like what makes people tick, right? And like how they're going to give you their business. Right. And then you can take that and you can learn from it. And it's not like a science, but like you can kind of like just figure out that, hey, if you are invested in building strong relationships with people and treating them well, they'll likely repay the favor. Right.
I think that's that. And like probably more, like probably repay the favor 10 times over. Right. Like I remember hearing, the old adage that like, people buy from people they like or trust, and then kind of hearing the other side of that to say like people buy from people they like, trust, or want to be like. And I'm like, it's one of those three things, right? Because if any of those things are more true than you just buying on price alone, then anybody who gives a damn about relationships will win that 10 times out of 10, right? Like it's if the thought is like, these bartenders, they're okay. Like they're not the best bartenders in the world. They're okay. But man, do I love having them on site for 8 hours. Like I'll recommend you every time, right? Because it's like the bartenders are the bartenders, whatever. Like, I guess anybody could learn how to mix a good drink, but like, bring me that great personality for 10 hours. It makes my day better, right? Same with you, right?
I
You're
remember, sorry, cut you off.
Same thing though. Like even if I thought your videos were like good enough, it's like, it's you that I want here. And it's you that I, also feel safe sending into a bride's home at 7:00 in the morning to literally film her getting dressed, right?
You need 110 fucking % in the morning. You're going in there, you're like, all right, let's get this. And you got to get everybody else amped up too, right?
Legit, yeah. And that's like, that can't be easy.
But that's a tough one though. I almost feel like videography is almost like the outlier, where like your work is like, that's your payoff, right?
But I agree. But like to the bride, but like, where did the bride hear about you? From the venue? If the venue said, listen, go look at his videos, and she's like, yeah, they're good enough, right? Like, then it's like, there's still a certain bar that you have to meet, but like, I've
seen a lot of repetition in the industry from people I've met.
Yeah.
And the thing it comes down to is who gets along with people.
Yeah.
Like if you get along, you guys like that's such a big part. Like having energy for everybody.
Yeah, legit.
And it's like if we help feed each other in the industry, then everybody's happy because we get through the day so much easier.
100%. Just like look for swans and like hang out with them.
Yeah, nice guys.
That's
do
what
not
I did.
finish last. I
Got me here.
couldn't disagree more with that. Yeah.
Especially in our industry, right?
Yeah. No, it goes a long way.
Nice.
You had wanted to ask something.
Oh, I was just gonna add, but I got caught up in the convo. Save it for the next time. Now you got to come back.
Yeah, we can do part 2 anytime.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Guys, thank you very much.
Fantastic conversation.
This is a blast. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we're gonna probably need to bring you on again because I think there's like a whole lot there that we could have like dove down.
Man, it would be an honor. It would absolutely be an honor. Yeah. Awesome, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Till next time. Cheers, guys.